Might turn to 1 Kings chapter 12. 1 Kings 12. We're going to be spending most of our time this morning in chapter 13. So just open your Bible there and set it down in your lap. We've got lots of reading to do this morning as we work through a story in chapter 13 that I think is a fascinating story. But before we get into the story of chapter 13, we need to spend some time in the context. We need to go back to chapter 12 and see what has happened that led to this story in chapter 13. The kingdom of Israel has just divided. It has split into the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, is the king of Judah in the south, and Jeroboam is the king of Israel in the north. Now, Jeroboam knows that one of the requirements that God has for the Jews is to go to Jerusalem multiple times per year for specific days of worship. And Jeroboam is worried about that because if the people in Israel in the north go down south to Judah, go to the city of Jerusalem to worship, he's afraid that they're going to turn back to Rehoboam's rule, that they will overthrow him. In fact, in verse 27 of chapter 12, he fears that the people will kill him and then give their allegiance to Rehoboam in the south. So in order to stop that from happening, Jeroboam comes up with an idea. He is going to erect two golden calves. He's going to put one in the city of Dan and one in the city of Bethel. And he's going to tell the people in Israel in the north, it's too far for you to travel south to Jerusalem. You don't need to go all the way down there. Save your time. Just go to Dan or go to Bethel. And you can worship God there. And so he mimics some of the feasts that are occurring in Jerusalem. And he comes up with a new national way of worship. He says that these gods that he has made, these golden calves, that these are the gods that brought you out of Egypt. And he is going to make a number of changes to God's prescribed methods of worship. He will let anybody who wants to be a priest be a priest. No, you don't have to be from the tribe of Levi. If you want to be a priest, you can be one. He's going to change the days of worship. He's changed already the place of worship. Jeroboam is creating a new form of religion in Israel. And of course, God is not pleased about this. What right does Jeroboam have to make any changes to the way that God wishes to be worshiped? God has already spoken through Moses in the law of Moses about all of these things. The days that they were to worship, how they were to worship, where they were to worship. All of that has already been settled. And yet Jeroboam is making these changes. And in chapter 12 and in verse 33, it says, Jeroboam went up to the altar which he had made in Bethel on the 15th day of the 8th month, even the month which he had devised in his own heart. And he instituted a feast for the sons of Israel, and he went up to the altar to burn incense. Now that helps us understand where we're going as we roll into chapter 13. Jeroboam has gone to Bethel to worship according to the new form and the new changes of worship that he has created. And while he is in Bethel, at the altar, burning incense on this altar that he has made, chapter 13, verse 1. Now behold, there came a man of God from Judah to Bethel by the word of the Lord, while Jeroboam was standing by the altar to burn incense. This is a prophet who is from the land of Judah that God sends north to Bethel to rebuke Jeroboam. Because of all of these changes that he has made that God is not pleased with, this prophet who is given no name in the story. He is simply referred to as the man of God. But this man of God is going to go confront King Jeroboam and rebuke him. Verse 2, he cried against the altar by the word of the Lord and said, O altar, altar, thus says the Lord, behold, a son shall be born to the house of David, Josiah by name, and on you he shall sacrifice the priests of the high places who burn incense on you, and human bones shall be burned on you. Well, that's quite a statement to make, isn't it? Several things in verse 2 are of interest. This man of God is speaking to the altar, not to King Jeroboam, but of course he really is speaking to Jeroboam, isn't he? But he speaks to the altar and he says, many years from now, a king will be born to the house of David, a king named Josiah. And on you, again, talking to the altar, he will sacrifice the priests of the high places who burn incense on you. And human bones will be burned on you. This altar is now being used by Jeroboam for offering incense in this false worship. Let me tell you about the incense that's going to be burned on you one day. Bones of people is what will be burned on you when Josiah comes. Then he says in verse 3, a sign is given that day. This is the sign which the Lord has spoken. Behold, the altar shall be split apart, and the ashes which are on it shall be poured out. Now, obviously, this is not what Jeroboam wants to hear. That this prophet of God has come denouncing him and his altar that he is worshiping on. He is, of course, denouncing King Jeroboam as he makes these pronouncements against the altar. And so Jeroboam stretches out his hand, he points at the man of God, and he says, arrest him. And while his hand is extended, his hand begins to shrivel up. And if that wasn't enough, verse 5 says that the sign that the man of God spoke came true. The altar was split apart, and the ashes were poured out from the altar according to the sign which the man of God had given by the word of the Lord. So while Jeroboam's hand is shriveling and is withered up while he's pointing, calling for the prophet's arrest, while that is happening, the altar splits and breaks open, and the ashes of the altar just spread as smoke fills the place. Now the prophet has Jeroboam's attention. So Jeroboam begs the man of God, please pray to God for me that I can be restored, that my hand will be healed. And the man of God shows compassion on Jeroboam. He entreats the favor of God, and God heals Jeroboam's hand. Now, to show his gratitude, in verse 7, the king said to the man of God, come home with me and refresh yourself, and I will give you a reward. But the man of God said to the king, if you were to give me half of your house, I would not go with you, nor would I eat bread or drink water in this place. For so it was commanded me by the word of the Lord, saying, you shall eat no bread, nor drink water, nor return by the way which you came. So he went another way and did not return by the way which he came to Bethel. By the time we get to this point in the story, this prophet of God, again, a nameless prophet, but this man of God is an impressive character. He has gone to a foreign place to rebuke Jeroboam to his face. He has performed a great sign in front of King Jeroboam, which is validating the message that he is preaching. He has watched Jeroboam's hand shrivel up. He has encouraged the healing of that hand. And now that Jeroboam is offering him kindness, he says, no, God told me not to eat or drink while I am here, and I am leaving, and God told me that I can't even go home the same way that I came. And out he goes, returning home a different way. Now, verse 11 introduces another character, who again, nameless. Now, an old prophet was living in Bethel. Now, this prophet is said to be old. I'm taking from that this first prophet that we've been studying about is younger. So if you hear me say the young prophet, I simply mean the first prophet. The old prophet was living in Bethel, and his sons came and told him all the deeds which the man of God had done that day in Bethel, the words which he had spoken to the king, and these they also related to their father. Their father said to them, "Which way did he go?" Now his sons had seen the way which the man of God who came from Judah had gone. Then he said to his sons, "Saddle the donkey for me." So they saddled the donkey for him, and he rode away on it. So he went after the man of God, and he found him sitting under an oak tree. And he said to him, "Are you the man of God who came from Judah?" And he said, "I am." Then he said to him, "Come home with me and eat bread." Now that makes sense. The old prophet sees this younger prophet, and he's heard about the things that he's done. He's heard about how he confronted Jeroboam and how he rebuked Jeroboam and all those things that took place. And I'm sure this old prophet just wants to meet together with him and talk shop a little bit. You're a prophet, I'm a prophet. Let's get together and let's talk about the things that we do. But once again, the prophet says, look at verse 16, "I cannot return with you, nor go with you, nor will I eat bread or drink water with you in this place. For a command came to me by the word of the Lord. You shall eat no bread, nor drink water there. Do not return by going the way which you came." This second offering of hospitality is also refused for the exact same reason. The man of God again repeats the clear instructions that God gave to him. He focuses on what God has said. I am on a mission. God sent me here for a purpose, and I am going to do what God said. I cannot go with you. Now the story turns in verse 18. He said to him, "I also am a prophet like you." This is the older prophet speaking now. "And an angel spoke to me by the word of the Lord, saying, bring him back with you to your house, that he may eat bread and drink water." And now the writer of Kings says, "But he lied to him." So the old prophet says, yeah, I understand that God told you not to eat or drink anything and that you need to return home a different way. But God spoke to me too. And he told me to welcome you and that it was okay for you to eat and drink. So, verse 19, he went back with him and ate bread in his house and drank water. So the text clearly says the old prophet lied to the younger prophet. Why did he lie to him? It doesn't say. What's his motive? What's his purpose? We don't know. The text gives no reason. But he convinces the young prophet because he says, God spoke to me too. Now it came about, verse 20, as they were sitting down at the table, that the word of the Lord came to the prophet who had brought him back. Okay, so now in verse 20, the word of the Lord really does come to the old prophet, truly. It's not a lie this time. Now God really does speak to the old prophet. And he cried to the man of God who came from Judah, saying, so imagine this. These two men, okay, are sitting down and they're sharing this meal together. And while they are eating, the old prophet gets a message from God which he speaks to the young prophet. Okay, and here's what he says. Because you have disobeyed the command of the Lord, and have not observed the commandment which the Lord your God commanded you, but have returned and eaten bread and drunk water in the place of which he said to you, eat no bread and drink no water, your body shall not come to the grave of your fathers. You're going to die. Because you have disobeyed, you are going to die. Now, it doesn't tell him how he is going to die. It doesn't tell him when he is going to die, but the judgment of God has come. Your body will not come to the grave of your fathers. So verse 23, it came about after he had eaten bread and after he had drunk that he saddled the donkey for him, for the prophet whom he had brought back. Well, after you lie to someone and then you prophesy of their imminent death, the least you can do is go saddle their donkey. Can you imagine how awkward this table conversation was after the prophecy came to the old prophet? The young prophet hears this judgment that comes from God, and don't you know, he's sitting there thinking, you lied to me. You said that God spoke to you and told you that it was okay for me to come back with you. And now that God truly has spoken to you, he said that I'm going to die because you caused me to disobey. What an awkward conversation that must have been. Well, listen, I'm really sorry about that. Let me go saddle up your donkey for you, though, and send you along on your way. So, verse 24. When the man of God had left, a lion met him on the way and killed him. And his body was thrown on the road, with the donkey standing beside it. The lion also was standing beside the body. Verse 28 says that the lion did not eat the body, and it did not eat the donkey. So if you put those two verses together, you imagine that you're traveling down this road, and as you're coming along, you see a donkey just standing there, not moving. On the ground, you see the dead body of this man, and then you see a lion just sitting there, not eating the dead body, not threatening the donkey. Donkey, body, lion. That'd be kind of strange, wouldn't it? But this is important. And the writer of Kings says these things for a reason. The lion did not eat the donkey. The lion did not eat the body. Why do those details matter? Well, think about this. If the lion had killed the man of God and then just ripped him up to shreds, and then the lion kills the donkey and rips the donkey up to shreds, people would come across that scene on the road. What would they think? Wow, and these poor folks, or this poor man, he's just going along on his donkey. And man, just wrong place, wrong time. This lion just came out of nowhere and just gobbled him up. Oh, what bad luck. How terrible that is. People would just assume that this was an unfortunate accident. God wanted everyone to know this was not an accident. This was a judgment upon the man of God. This was not simply a matter of him being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Well, he got in the way of a severely hungry lion. That poor guy. No, that is not what this was. How strange it would be for a fierce, hungry lion to attack someone and kill them and then just leave their corpse there. How strange that would be. And that's exactly the point. So verse 25, behold, men passed by and saw the body thrown on the road and the lion standing beside the body. So they came and told it in the city where the old prophet lived. That's Bethel. Now when the prophet who brought him back from the way heard this, he said, it is the man of God who disobeyed the command of the Lord. Therefore the Lord has given him to the lion, which has torn him and killed him, according to the word of the Lord which he spoke. So he spoke to his sons and said, saddle the donkey for me, and they did. And he went, verse 28, and he found his body thrown on the road with the donkey and the lion standing beside the body. How long do you think it was from the time that the man of God left the old prophet's house, starts traveling on the road, the lion comes out, kills him? How long was it from that point until the old prophet saddles his donkey and goes out along the road and finds him? I know that there's no way for us to answer the question, but can we agree that it wasn't 10 minutes? There must have been some interval of time here. And yet that lion, he's just still sitting there, like a dog leashed to a tree. He's just standing there. He's not going anywhere. How strange this is. But this was not an accident. This was a judgment. So the prophet then, verse 29, took up the body of the man of God. He laid it on the donkey and brought it back. And he came to the city of the old prophet, again, Bethel, to mourn and to bury him. He laid his body in his own grave, and they mourned over him, saying, alas, my brother. Are you a little bit confused by this old prophet? Kind of a bewildering character in some ways. He lies to this young man. God spoke to me and told me that you should come back to my home and eat and drink with me. Then he gives the truth of God's word to the young prophet when God gives him that prophecy that the young man is going to die. And then the old prophet, he apparently feels really bad about what has happened. And so he finds the body of the young man and he treats him well and he buries him and he mourns over him. And then to continue in verse 31, he says to his own sons, when I die, bury me in the grave in which the man of God is buried. Lay my bones beside his bones. Bury me next to him. The man whose death I am at least mostly responsible for. The old prophet says in verse 32, for the thing shall surely come to pass, which he cried by the word of the Lord against the altar in Bethel, and against all the houses of the high places which are in the cities of Samaria. When the man of God went to Bethel and rebuked Jeroboam early in the chapter, all of those things that he said about in the future from the line of David, a man named Josiah will burn bones on you and the altar is going to split open and all of that. The old man says, he's right. I believe what the man of God spoke to Jeroboam. Those things are going to come to pass. The old prophet recognized that this young prophet was a true prophet. Let's pause the story here for a moment. Go to 2 Kings chapter 23. Because the words of the man of God spoken to Jeroboam proved correct. 2 Kings chapter 23. Josiah is the king in Judah. And in 2 Kings 23, let's begin reading at verse 15. Furthermore, the altar which was at Bethel, and the high place which Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin, had made, even that altar and the high place Josiah broke down. Then he demolished its stones, ground them to dust, and burned the Asherah. Now when Josiah turned, he saw the graves that were on the mountain. And he sent and took the bones from the graves and burned them on the altar and defiled it according to the word of the Lord, which the man of God proclaimed. Who proclaimed these things? That's the man of God from 1 Kings 13, the one who was eaten by the lion. Verse 17, then Josiah said, what is this monument that I see? And the men of the city told him, it is the grave of the man of God who came from Judah and proclaimed these things which you have done against the altar of Bethel. And he said, let him alone, let no one disturb his bones. So they left his bones undisturbed with the bones of the prophet who came from Samaria. Don't burn his along with all the other ones. Leave him alone. This man of God who long ago spoke this condemnation of Jeroboam. This story in 1 Kings 13 is tragic and sad. And the story might even seem to be puzzling and confusing for us. What is this story all about? What are we supposed to take away from this? What does this story mean for you and me? Let's talk about 3 applications I want to make from this story, and then we'll wrap up our lesson. We need to start with the application that the text of 1 Kings 13 makes clear for us. Why does this story happen when it happens? Why does this happen at this point in history? Why is this recorded in the book of 1 Kings in the place that it is recorded? And the answer to that is to make this point. Application number 1. God takes disobedience seriously. Go back to 1 Kings 13. This is exactly what the text tells us. 1 Kings 13, verse 33. After this event, after this whole saga with the man of God who came from Judah up to Bethel and rebuked him, after this event, Jeroboam did not return from his evil way. But again, he made priests of the high places from among all the people. Any who would, he ordained to be priests of the high places. This event became sin to the house of Jeroboam, even to blot it out and destroy it from the face of the earth. Who was the target audience of this story of the man of God from Judah? Jeroboam. He was the one whom God wanted to see all of these events unfold and then learn from these events. But Jeroboam learned nothing from the prophet who rebuked him. He continued in his sin. He persisted in making these changes to God's ways of worship, and that led to the complete destruction of his family line. In fact, if you flip over to chapter 15, 1 Kings 15, look at verse 28. So Baasha killed him in the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, and reigned in his place. Baasha becomes the king in Israel. And it came about, verse 29, as soon as he was king, he struck down all the household of Jeroboam. He did not leave to Jeroboam any persons alive until he had destroyed them, according to the word of the Lord which he had spoken by his servant Ahijah. And because of the sins of Jeroboam which he sinned, which he made Israel sin, because of his provocation with which he provoked the Lord God of Israel to anger, Baasha destroyed everyone in Jeroboam's lineage. And it was because Jeroboam didn't learn this lesson. God takes disobedience seriously. Think about what has happened. Jeroboam, king of Israel, makes all of these changes to God's prescribed way of worship. And then God brings judgment upon this nameless prophet from Judah who disobeyed God's instructions, listen to me, over something that seems to be not a very big deal. Right? What did God tell the man of God not to do? Don't eat anything, don't drink anything, and don't have a round-trip ticket. That's what he told him. And when the man of God disobeyed those instructions, God took his life. Doesn't that seem to be like small potatoes compared to what Jeroboam has done? Yeah, it does. And yet God brought judgment upon this nameless prophet over something that seemed so small. How much more will God judge the sins of Jeroboam? The most prominent man in the nation of Israel, who has made broad, sweeping changes to God's ways of worship. If God judges this small matter, how much more will he judge this flagrant digression away from God's instructions? The man of God knew God's instructions. They were clear. He repeated them twice in the story. God said this to me: don't eat any food, don't drink any water, don't go back the way you came. I intend to obey God. He knew exactly what God had said. The instructions were clear. The instructions were simple, and he should have obeyed those instructions. Jeroboam, take the hint, sir. Moses' instructions are clear. They are simple. You worship God in this place. You worship God in these ways, on these days. You don't make changes. Moses said, do not turn from the right or to the left. It's pretty simple, Jeroboam. But he didn't get it. He didn't learn from this story. So that's our first application. Here's a second one. Be careful who you listen to. Be careful who you listen to. Again, I don't know why the old prophet lied. I don't know what his motive was. It doesn't matter either. What matters is that he lied. And when you know God's clearly spoken word, which the man of God did, and someone then tells you something different, what do? You listen to God. You don't take the word of a man. You listen to God and what you know for a fact that God has said. I'm going to Galatians chapter 1. The apostles highlight this point in their preaching. In Galatians chapter 1, the apostle Paul, writing to Christians who are beginning to follow a different message. They are giving in to what is a perverted and distorted gospel. And Paul says in verse 8 of Galatians 1, but even if we, the apostles, or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to what we have preached to you, he is to be accursed. As we have said before, and so I say again now, if any man is preaching to you a gospel contrary to what you received, he is to be accursed. When you hear something that you know is the truth of God, but then someone else comes along and says something different, Paul says, I don't care if it's an angel. If an angel comes and he preaches something to you different from what you know that God has already said is true, you don't listen to that man. You don't listen to that person, because not everyone who claims to be an authority is one. Not everyone who has a Bible and a YouTube channel is someone that you should listen to. There are limitless voices that we can hear online. And so many of them can say some things that are good and true and useful. But folks, listen, many of them are saying things that will hurt you if you are not listening with discernment. Well, this man is a good Bible teacher on YouTube, and look, he's got 1 million subscribers on his channel. This preacher I found on the internet is so easy to listen to. And he stands up with his Bible and he reads from the Word of God. And I just learned so much from this. I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can learn some things that are good from those people, but you can also learn some things that will lead you down the wrong path. And so we need to be careful who we listen to. And here's a third point that I want to make, and I'll leave you with this. Number 3, I am responsible for me and no one else. I am responsible for me. No one else is responsible for me. In this story, the question, is this fair? Always arises. I mean, think about it. Why does God punish the young prophet and not the old prophet who lied? Why doesn't the lion come to the house of the old prophet? I don't know the answer to that. I do know that the old prophet has already answered to God for what he did. I know that. But why did he not have to answer at the powerful grip of the lion's fangs? I don't know the answer to that. But God's judgment came upon the old prophet too, though it's not recorded in this story. But even though the man of God was lied to, he still knew exactly what God had told him. He was without excuse. And so ultimately, the one who is responsible for my choices and my actions is me. I can point to other people and I can blame them for what they have done or what they have said and how they've had an impact on my life and how they've influenced me. And I may even have a legitimate point to make. But that still doesn't remove my own personal responsibility to obey God. Well, I grew up in a house where my parents didn't teach me the ways of God, and I just didn't know any better. Well, I'm sorry that that happened. And I hate that that was your experience. And yet, God is dealing with you now. And so you need to overcome that. And that may be difficult. There may be challenges that come along with that, and yet you still must do it. Well, my spouse makes it really hard for me to serve the Lord. I'm sorry. I know that that's difficult, and yet you must still serve the Lord. well, all the people that I work with, they're just such worldly people, and they talk about me and they mock me and ridicule me because I'm a Christian. Okay, I'm sorry that you're dealing with that. They persecuted the prophets who were before you, Jesus said. You still must serve the Lord. This man of God could easily say, but God, he lied to me. He said that you spoke to him and told him that it was okay for me to do this. But what did God say to the young prophet? God takes disobedience seriously. We need to be careful who we listen to. And we need to remember that ultimately, each one of us is responsible for our own actions. Jeroboam refused to learn from the story of the man of God. He didn't change his ways, and it led to the destruction of his entire household. And so I need to ask myself, what is God trying to teach me with this story? Might there be some situation in my life right now where there is someone like the man of God that as I watch their story unfold, I should see it and learn from it? Not being like Jeroboam, who stubbornly refused to do things God's way. But what is God trying to teach us in this story? I appreciate your attention this morning. Let's get ready to sing our invitation song. There may be someone here this morning who knows that your life is not what it should be before the Lord, and you want to make that right. We are ready to encourage you in that and assist you in that. Make your way to the front now as we stand and sing together.